Today I'm at Watford Junction. Now, you might be wondering why I'm here talking about London and the Underground, because technically this station isn't even in London, it's in Hertfordshire, nor is it on the London Underground network. But there is a connection. The London Overground's Lioness line ends here, so what does that have to do with the Bakerloo line? Stick around, because that's exactly what we're going to explore. Hello and welcome. Before we get into the question in the title, let's take a step back and talk about a bit of history, because Watford Junction used to be part of the Bakerloo line. Back in 1915, the Baker Street and Waterloo Railway, working with the London and North Western Railway, extended the line from Queen's Park all the way to Watford Junction. It ran alongside their West Coast Main Line and shared tracks with the LNWR's Watford DC service, and also served several intermediate stations along the way. By the mid-1960s, the Bakerloo line services north of Queen's Park started to be reduced, and by 1982, the entire line had been cut back to Stonebridge Park. Just 2 years later, public pressure caused it to be re-extended back to Harrow and Wealdstone in 1984, first just at peak hours and then all day by 1989. And since then, Harrow and Wealdstone has been the end of the Bakerloo line, although only about 4 trains per hour actually go that far. The rest terminate at Queen's Park or Stonebridge Park. So, how far should Bakerloo line trains actually go north of Queen's Park? There are a few different options which have been suggested before. Option 1. Terminate at Queen's Park. It's operationally easy and it's been done before, but Queen's Park is still in Zone 2, so it doesn't really extend the line's reach. An issue which the Bakerloo line has had is that it doesn't bring enough passengers into central London from outside. The Bakerloo line already has a Zone 1 terminus at Elephant and Castle, so cutting it back here would make the north end too short as well and cause the same issue there. Additionally, trains need to get to the Stonebridge Park depot for maintenance and stabling anyway. Option 2. Terminate at Stonebridge Park. That happened briefly in 1982, but it didn't last. With today's higher ridership, cutting the service back here again wouldn't make much sense. 1982 was also around the time of record low rail usage in the UK, so I don't think a repeat decision could be justified. Additionally, Wembley Central has about twice the amount of people using it that Stonebridge Park does, so it would not really be a very good decision to reduce the service to this station as well, by cutting it back to Stonebridge Park again. Option 3. Keeping Harrow and Wealdstone as the terminus. This one isn't ideal either. It's where the line currently ends, but its capacity is limited. Only about 1 in 4 trains get this far, and not because of low demand, but because of how the tracks and platforms are laid out. Let's take a look at that quickly. Here at Harrow and Wealdstone, the Bakerloo line shares platforms with the London Overground. When a Bakerloo line train terminates, it is shunted into a single siding just north of the platforms. The driver then walks through to the other end of the train, and when the line is clear, they drive it back into the southbound platform for a short period of time to pick up passengers. The train will then depart and return south. All of that takes time, and because there's only one siding, there's no room to turn around more trains without causing congestion and ultimately delays. So the real issue that limits increased capacity to terminate trains here isn't demand, it's the layout of the platforms and siding and how the trains reverse. As you have seen now, although it is the current arrangement, Option 3 is also not a good option, as it physically limits the capacity at the northern end of the line, which means that even if you wanted to run extra trains during busier times of day or event days at Wembley Stadium, you can't. This brings us to Option 4, Watford Junction. It has been cited previously that there is little demand and no case to run trains here, which may have been true in 1982, but as general train usage has rebounded since then, perhaps it's time to reconsider. If you look at the 2023 passenger entries and exits for stations between Stonebridge Park and Watford Junction, they are actually not that bad. In fact, there are quite a few tube stations with fewer passengers that still get a better service, although they are not all on the same line. And that's the problem. Here's why I think a resumption of Watford Junction services would make sense. Firstly, a low frequency north of Stonebridge Park means a poor service quality, especially at intermediate stations like Harrow and Wealdstone or Wembley Central, which have considerable passenger numbers. It also makes the Bakerloo Line less attractive compared to nearby stations on other lines that have almost double the number of trains per hour, such as Kenton and Northwick Park, or even South Kenton and Preston Road. A better service could encourage local investment and housing development. Stations north of Harrow and Wealdstone like Watford Junction, Watford High Street and Carpenter's Park already see passenger numbers similar to many outer London tube stations, and also have upcoming housing developments nearby which could boost these numbers further in the future. So, why is a Bakerloo Line re-extension generally better than a Metropolitan Line extension? Operationally, it's ideal. It has 4 terminus platforms separate from National Rail and is physically the end of the line, so all trains stop here, and this resolves some of the Bakerloo Line's existing issues. Additionally, unlike the Metropolitan Line's Watford branch, which stops short of the town centre, this route already runs through the heart of Watford with just the need for the 4th rail renewal and possibly a small depot and sidings needed if you want to stable more trains. The old Croxley Rail Link plan would have cost far more and needed extra infrastructure. The original line was single track, so I would presume the purchase of land and widening of railway bridges would be needed as well, and maybe some tunnelling would even be necessary to connect it up to the Metropolitan Line's existing branch. In terms of journey time, it's competitive too. From Watford High Street to Baker Street, it's about 47 minutes via the Overground and Bakerloo Line, compared to around 40 minutes on the Metropolitan Line, which actually becomes 51 minutes by the time you get to Watford Station from the High Street. I would guess that the Croxley Rail Link wouldn't make this that much quicker, and the times would still be quite close. With the inevitable replacement of the 1972 stock on the Bakerloo Line coming ever closer, it would be a sensible idea to factor the re-extension to Watford Junction into the order for new trains so that there are enough trains to operate the service. So, to wrap this up, there is a case for re-extending the Bakerloo Line to Watford Junction, and, in a way, Watford wants an underground line, and the Bakerloo Line wants a better equipped northern terminus than Harrow and Wealdstone, so the two problems solve each other to some extent. Passenger numbers are also up since 1982, and they continue to rise, and there is new development already. In fact, I forgot to mention that there are some new flats being constructed right behind Watford Junction itself, although I didn't film this. This plan is also easier to complete and most likely cheaper to fund than the Croxley Rail Link scheme. The Overground and Bakerloo Line also offer a competitive time from central Watford into central London, with much less work being done to enable the service. And in addition to this, the 1972 tube stock needs replacing anyway. This is about 13 years overdue, and at 53 years of age, the failure rate is ever increasing. Lastly, Harrow and Wealdstone puts a hard limit on the frequency north of Stonebridge Park, and moving the terminus to Watford Junction allows for greater flexibility in the service patterns. Not every train needs to go there, but this can be useful for managing demand at peak times or events at Wembley Stadium. I would envisage that during the course of the day, trains would only go to Queen's Park or Watford Junction. Stonebridge Park terminators would be at the end of service for stabling in the depot. Perhaps Harrow and Wealdstone could be used to turn around extra trains for Wembley events possibly, but that's just an idea. Only time will tell whether or not this will be implemented, but this is probably one of the more feasible ideas, and I believe there is a good case for it. Thanks for watching. I hope you found this interesting, and if you've got something to add, put it in the comments. If you find this concept interesting, please subscribe for more.